This is Gilbert Gottfried, and I'm here with my co-host Frank Santopadre, and this is Gilbert and Frank's amazing colossal obsessions with blues singer Blind Raybone.
Blind Lemon Raybone. Muddy Raybone. This never gets old.
I just came back from Highway 61.
It never gets old, does it?
It never does. No.
We'll beat this into the ground. Let's see.
When have we ever done that?
Last week we were saying goodbye to the great Chuck McCann.
Yes.
And talking about Casey Kasem meltdowns.
Oh, yes.
And all other kinds of things. This week we're going to do Producer of the Month. This is something we do through Patreon.
But last week we didn't talk about an 800-pound Marlon Brando fucking Richard Pryor in the act.
Well, you haven't let me tell you what this Producer of the Month episode is about.
Okay. Oh, my God.
That's a hint.
Are we on the same wavelength? I didn't even show him these cards. How does he know?
What wavelength is that exactly?
Wow.
I'll explain this since Gilbert doesn't go to Patreon and has no idea what Producer of the Month is, or Gilbert sings. He just shows up.
And we talked about how Bruce Stern called me a smart motherfucker.
He did. He called you a smart motherfucker. Not to be confused with my dad, who said you were one funny fuck. My late dad, Charles. This is Producer of the Month. We do it through Patreon. You go there, you toss in a couple of shekels, and you get your pick. If we like your episode idea, we take it. And this is David Komerovsky. I hope I'm saying that right. Komerofsky. Gilbert would have a great time with that one. And his idea for a Producer of the Month episode is, what are your favorite Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor movies? Now, where would he get that idea? How would he think to combine those two artists?
Have those two ever met?
I don't know.
That Superman.
David was being a little cheeky.
Yes, yeah.
Well, Brando was not in. He didn't shoot anything new for Superman 3.
Brando was in Richard Pryor's cheeks.
Now, why do you assume, this has come up before, why do you assume that Pryor was the bottom?
Because the image is too great of a terrified Richard Pryor with his eyes bugging out like the black Pullman porter in an old movie.
I see, like Manton Moreland.
Yes. And an 800-pound Brando
this is
fucking him in the
This
ass.
is just not PC at all.
And they said that Marlon Brando also fucked in the ass Marvin Gaye and James Baldwin.
Where did you hear this? Was that also Quincy Jones?
Yeah.
I only heard about Pryor.
And Quincy, you're invited on the show.
He's not going to do it.
Anytime you want.
We've tried repeatedly.
Yes.
That would be a train wreck.
And like Richard Pryor, one of Richard Pryor's daughter denied it, but his wife,
his ex-wife,
his ex-wife,
yeah,
because he's not married to her now.
She's been largely discredited by anyone reputable.
And one of Pryor's other daughters said it's true.
Really?
And I go along with Quincy.
Okay.
I mean the Jack Klugman Quincy.
Of course.
Who examined both Marlon Brando and Richard Pryor's
Stop him, he's
corpse.
free associating. Oh.
He was digging through the asshole of Richard Pryor's corpse and said, I think we found some of Brando's semen.
See, this is what you're talking about. You can't find this on any other podcast.
You really can't. You really can't. A bad impression of Jack Klugman doing forensic work in
Richard Pryor's
sphincter.
And that was a very important Quincy.
It was a good Quincy. It was a special Quincy. It's a very special
That's
Quincy.
One of those that ended without the closing music. It Just the titles came up.
It spoke for itself.
Oh my God. I'm not even going to get to this premise. Well, do you have any ability
No.
in the course of the next 20 minutes to discuss your favorite Brando and Richard Pryor movies? I have my own list.
Deep Throat.
No. You want to start with Brando or do you want to start with Pryor?
Up the down staircase.
I'm going to let him tire himself out, which should take no more than 30 or 40 minutes.
Not with my face, you don't.
Lord almighty. Is this in the act yet? The Brando Pryor thing? Have you put it in the act?
No,
Why don't you put it in the act?
Because that would make it something new.
You'd actually have to write punchlines for it. Here's some Pryor films. Blue Collar with Ed Begley.
Oh, that's right.
And Yaphet Kotto,
Yes.
who's a Jew.
A Jew.
Yes.
And he's one of the Jew James Bond villains.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Harvey Keitel.
Yes. And didn't we find out that Yaphet Kotto was born Jewish, that he did not convert?
Someone
Judaism?
said he did not
Somebody told him,
convert.
yeah.
He was, and that Blue Collar.
Made by Paul Schrader. Good picture.
What's it? Oh, I heard, when they got to TV, there was a lot of obscenity that they had to replace, like fuck with gee whiz and stuff like that.
Like they do.
And I heard, I think it was Dave Coulier who was imitating Pryor.
Are you
to do
serious?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He said they got him to imitate Pryor and, put in clean versions.
I had no idea that. What are you looking up, Paul?
I got Yaphet Kotto
Yeah.
here, born 1939. We haven't had him on the show. Really.
No, we have not had Yaphet Kotto.
They had to replace
Some of
that
this-
line where he said, "Oh, Marlon Brando's fucking me in the
Yeah,
ass."
that one. Dave Coulier did it.
Live and Let Die was the Bond
Dave
movie.
Cooley. Live and Let Die. Yes, he played
Homicide. He played what was
Kananga.
I don't have
Mr.
the name
Big?
here.
Yeah, I believe that's it. Good picture, by the way. Paul Schrader's
very
Blue
good
Collar. Our
film,
friend Ed
yeah.
Begley is in that. I'm going to run through some Pryor films here, and Gilbert can do bits. Car Wash.
Oh, yes.
Michael Schultz directed. You know that picture? George Carlin's in it.
Yeah. Also, Professor
Professor
Corey.
Erwin Corey's in Car Wash.
And
and
George
Franklin Ajayi.
Carlin. Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Erwin Corey, very special person for this podcast.
Yes, he was.
Almost derailed
Yes, he was
it before.
patient zero.
He
Patient
was
zero.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah,
He was that mystery guest that no one knew about.
For years. There was speculation was rife for years.
Everywhere.
Who was the mystery guest?
Everywhere.
He was like that guy opening the umbrella in the Sabruta tape.
Jack Anderson was writing books about who was the first guest. How about Grease Lightning? You know this picture with Pryor where he plays a stock car driver?
Oh, yeah.
Wendell Scott.
Yes.
Good movie. I like that one. Let's see. Lady Sings the Blues. The Diana Ross movie.
Yes.
He's in that. He's very good. Sid Melton's in that, by the way. I know
That's right.
gonna get your nipples hard.
Yeah. Forget my nipples. I'm getting a raging boner.
God in heaven. Here are some. Richard Pryor live in concert. A wonderful stand-up
Yes.
movie,
Yeah.
which influenced Patton Oswalt. In fact, we talked about it last week. Those are the Pryor films.
And Pryor walked out on stage bow-legged.
No kidding.
Well,
Why would that be? What's the time on this one? Oh, I'm only 10 minutes in. This will be a 12-minute episode.
Yeah, it's been lovely being with you.
I like car.
and Brando's semen was clearly seen on the back of his pants.
All right. Do you like any particular Richard Pryor films? Did you like any of the ones I named?
Yeah, I like Blue Collar.
You like Blue Collar?
Yeah.
Car Wash? It's okay.
Yeah, I guess for its time period.
Here are some Pryor misfires.
Yeah.
Holy Moses.
Oh, I remember. Was what's his name? The English Dudley Moore.
Dudley
in that?
Moore.
Yes.
Dudley Moore, and I believe Lorraine Newman, former podcast guest. Superman 3.
Yes.
We talked about Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy.
Oh, and Red Fox. And former podcast guest Danny Aiello.
Nice work.
Yeah.
Look at you. Look at you when you pay attention. We'll get angry mail from people who say, "What do you mean Harlem Nights isn't a great picture? What do you tell you assholes? Holy Moses." Brewster's Millions with John Candy.
Oh, that's right. That was a remake.
That was a remake.
Of was it
Brewster's
Buster
Millions.
Keaton or something?
No,
or
I don't think so. I think it was made post Keaton. Some Kind of Hero. You know this picture?
Oh, with Ray
Sharkey and Margot Kidder.
Yes.
Yes. In God.
Oh yes.
In God We Trust. That was the one. Our former podcast guest George Shapiro was a producer on that one because Marty Feldman was in it, and Shapiro West managed Marty, and also Andy Kaufman turns up in that one because they also managed Andy Kaufman. So that was a Shapiro West joint. Critical Condition.
Oh,
co-starring another podcast guest. Who was it?
Oh God.
Who gets dirtier with you than anybody when you guys get together?
Was it Bob Saget?
Yes, Bob Saget. And last but not least, when we're talking about the cinema of Richard Pryor. Oh, I will point out a couple of good ones actually before I go to this last bad one. Well, let me do the last bad one.
Oh, and I worked for 2 weeks.
Oh, yes. We should mention that.
Yes. On the last, I didn't make it to the final reel, no loss. And that was the final film of Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder.
Another year.
And that was awful.
Really terrible.
Yeah.
But you were working for the original director, former podcast guest, Peter Bogdanovich.
Yes.
Boy, podcast guests are all over this.
And I met Gene Wilder's nephew at some of
Yeah, Dara was telling me. Does he know a lot about his uncle?
Well, he said during the making of Another You, at one point, Peter Bogdanovich left and to go home, and his girlfriend directed the scene.
No kidding.
And Gene Wilder said, well, does she direct?
Oh, my God. Bogdanovich went home and left his girlfriend in charge.
And he said, well, I'm pushing her in that direction.
Perfect. And that was the last you saw of Peter Bogdanovich on that picture. Yeah. I will mention, the last one I wanted to mention also has a podcast connection, The Toy with Jackie Gleason.
God.
Richard Pryor was directed by future podcast guest Richard Donner.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that one was, that's one of those where you hear, Jackie Gleason, Richard Pryor. How could this
go wrong?
Yeah. Oh, was that bad?
It's also like 35 years behind the times.
Oh yeah.
Here's two,
and that was a remake of a French movie.
I believe it was.
Oh, that was terrible.
Well, I'll also mention Richard Pryor for being one of the writers on The Great Blazing Saddles.
Oh, yeah.
He was in the writer's room
and
with podcast guest Norman Steinberg.
That's right. And Mel Brooks wanted Richard Pryor.
Correct.
But they number one, he had a drug problem.
Warner Brothers didn't want to touch him.
And they didn't feel he was big enough box office.
He also kept disappearing. I think that had something to do with it.
Yes.
As Norman pointed out on this very show, that Pryor would come and go.
Yeah.
He would do an hour in the room and leave for lunch and never come back.
Well, but they would find him at Brando's.
You don't say. In Tahiti. He made it all the way to Tahiti.
What they were doing there, I'm not sure.
Fascinating. You think he doesn't know trivia, but he does. Yeah. You think he doesn't know this stuff. Two quick Pryor movies that we have to mention. Silver Streak. Since you brought up Gene Wilder, which is a Hitchcock homage.
Yes.
Written by Colin Higgins, who wrote Harold and Maude. And also, we have a personal connection to this because it was written by Drew Friedman's dad, Stir Crazy.
Oh.
So there you go. And the last Pryor film
and then there was See No Evil, Hear No Evil.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
And now Joan Severance, I think, is the girl in there.
Wow.
And she does a nude scene.
No kidding.
So that's worth seeing. The rest of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What happened? Where's Joan Severance?
I don't know.
Maybe we should get her on the podcast.
Jones, are you going to talk like this in front of her? Last Pryor film is Bingo Long's Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings.
Oh, okay.
With Billy D. Williams.
Oh, and was also...
And James Earl Jones.
So-and-so Your Life is Calling.
JoJo Dancer.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to avoid that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about Brando.
Okay. Now, what connection did he have with Pryor?
If only David Komorowski, who recommended this episode idea, had any idea. There's a couple of...
well, he was in that All-Star thing about, like, the Strangler, Richard Burton and Ringo Starr were in
Candy?
Candy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a terrible, terrible motion picture.
Yeah, and I think it was after Brando agreed to do it. Then it becomes like dominoes.
Based on Terry Southern's book, and everything was lost in the translation.
Yeah, and they said, if Brando agreed to do it.
Yeah. We talked about that movie with Mike McPadden, who was here.
Yes.
We talked about Candy. That is Skidoo bad.
Oh, yeah.
Candy. And somehow not even as much fun as Skidoo.
No.
Which is... the Brando pictures, I mean, obviously the Godfather pictures, obviously Apocalypse Now.
Last Tango in Paris.
Last Tango in Paris, obviously on the waterfront.
Great still from The Wild One.
And I heard after Last Tango in Paris.
Uh-huh.
Last
Tango in Pryor?
Yeah, Brando would put butter in Richard Pryor's asshole as a lubricant.
Is it worth even reading the rest of these Brando movies? Here's some trivia about Apocalypse Now, written by John Milius. George Lucas was supposed to make it. Did you know that?
No.
Yes. Let's see. I think Brando's fun in that movie. He's strangely comical.
Yes.
In Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
How about
and that's where he goes, Are you a killer? And he says, I'm a soldier. And he goes, You're neither. You're a delivery boy sent by the grocer to collect the check.
Beautiful.
Oh, Gilbert, that was great.
Nicely done.
That was great.
Yes. I didn't believe a fly lands in his mouth or on his forehead at some point in that scene. Here's a couple of fun Brando performances. The Missouri Breaks with Nicholson.
That was one of those when Brando he realized people were intimidated.
Yes.
And he didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And they would say, Brando wants it this way. So it was his idea that he be in drag. And his idea that in the
It's a revisionist Western.
Yeah.
You ever see it, Paul? Missouri
No.
Breaks? Or see it. Arthur Penn.
Yeah.
And
Jack
in
Nicholson.
the Old West, he's
wild.
got an Irish brogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's not entirely successful, but it's fun. Here's another fun one, The Freshman, made by Andrew Bergman,
Yes.
who we just talked about, wrote Blazing Saddles. Paul Benedict shows up with his acromegaly. Bruno Kirby is in that one. Maximilian Schell. And former podcast guest, Matthew Broderick. And he sends up his Godfather. Have you seen The Freshman? You must see The Freshman.
Freshman.
He sends up his Don Corleone character as Jimmy the Toucan. And that one's a lot of fun. And here's another one that's a lot of fun. Don Juan DeMarco. Do you know this picture with Johnny Depp?
Faye Dunaway. Yes.
I'm going to recommend both of these. I'm going to recommend to our listeners, because people miss that we don't do the movies anymore.
See, now,
Don Juan DeMarco.
I never liked The Freshman.
You never liked it?
No.
How come? It's fun.
I don't know. To me, it's like, I love the Godfather picture.
Really?
And I feel like, what the fuck are you making fun of it?
All right, Gilbert is not recommending The Freshman.
Fat
Okay.
fuck.
What about Missouri Breaks? Is that
Yeah,
Missouri
he's
Breaks?
recommending Missouri Breaks.
Go fuck Richard Pryor in the ass and leave the Godfather alone.
Leave the cannoli.
Leave the cannolis.
I mean, take the cannoli. Leave the gun. He's a shrink. Johnny Depp thinks he's Don Juan, and he's a mental patient. And Brando is. Have you seen it? It's quite
No,
good.
I don't.
And Brando is the psychiatrist and treating Johnny Depp. I don't want to give too much away.
Oh, and in the
see the
heist, in the heist, he for some reason he didn't want to wear pants.
You mean the score?
The score?
That's the one
He
with
didn't
Frank,
want to wear
yeah.
pants,
Right.
so he's walking around in his underwear.
Yeah, Michael Weber told us
Yeah,
that.
and they're shooting it from the waist up.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend that one too. That's a good.
Wherever the waist on Brando was.
That's a good heist movie.
Yes.
Yeah, the score. The score.
Oh, and a connection I have there with Brando is I was on Hollywood Squares, and the question.
I can't wait for this.
Yeah, the question. The question was, what animal has the largest eyes? And I said, Marlon Brando at a buffet.
Hilarious.
And then I started doing more Marlon Brando joke, and they were so then they wanted to do a commercial, and usually they pick out the funniest line of the week, and that was the biggest line, and they didn't do it, and then we found out that Brando called Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, I know this story. You told it on the Whoopi episode.
Yeah. And he said, am I going to be the running joke on every one of these shows?
Wow.
And I thought, well, not really running, lumbering is more like.
Why the hell is Brando watching Hollywood Squares?
Yeah, well, he sits there with a giant carton of peanut butter cups.
Big sure. Well, there is the Wally Cox connection on the old Hollywood Squares.
Oh, that's right.
To Brando. Maybe he became a fan on the old show.
But I think Wally Cox used to fuck Brando.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, that's
what I hear. That's where
and he'd do his Mr. Peepers voice.
I read in Newsweek.
And he'd wear
Yeah, you can hardly not hear it. Really.
then-
Hear it
then
It's everywhere.
While he fucked Brando in the ass, he put on a superhero cape and said, "There's no need to fear. Underdog is here."
The free associating.
Yeah.
I will recommend The Score, directed by Frank Oz.
Yes.
With De Niro and Edward
Yeah.
Norton.
Norton!
Not that Norton.
Yeah.
Very good picture. Let's see. What other Brando pictures do I want to recommend? Definitely not The Countess from Hong Kong, directed by Charlie Chaplin.
And I heard the two of them hated
They were
each
oil
other.
and water.
And Sophia Loren.
Yeah. I do not want to recommend Reflections in a Golden Eye, but
Oh, and then there was what? One-Eyed Jack.
One-Eyed Jack is
Yeah.
the one he directed.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's with Carl Malden. But I will recommend this one, and that is a movie called The Chase. You know this picture?
Wait.
Anything, Paul Raybone?
I know.
I got another.
title.
Talk about this one. I got another one I want to mention when you finish.
Okay.
What was The Chase?
The Chase was a Western, another revisionist Western, because Arthur Penn liked to do those kinds of movies. Robert Redford was a fugitive on the run. Brando was the sheriff. It had Robert Duvall, Jane Fonda, E.G. Marshall,
Oh.
Angie Dickinson, and get this, Henry Hull, who was the Werewolf of
wow.
London.
Oh, my goodness.
How about that? Now, I will tell you why I bring that movie up in particular, because there's a character named Seymour in that movie, played by former podcast guest Paul Williams.
Oh,
my
geez.
God.
And that is the movie where Paul Williams, who was trying to make it as an actor, was killing time on the set with a guitar, goofing around, writing songs, and Robert Duvall, as the story goes, overheard him singing the song, brought it to Arthur Penn, they put the song in the movie, and Paul Williams embarked on a songwriting career.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and it goes back to that movie,
Yeah.
The Chase.
And
So I have cleverly tied another podcast
Yes.
guest into the
Brilliantly.
sodomy-themed episode of the...
Paul Williams. I was when I was showing, there was a screening of my documentary Gilbert.
Uh-huh.
Paul Williams was either sweet enough or stupid enough to
I was in the
show
room.
up. And the minute I saw him in the audience, and he was there with also former podcast guests, Nicholson from Car 54.
I think you're confusing your two screenings.
Oh, they were too stiff for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So sitting in the first row there is Paul Williams. And so immediately I go, I get a lot of requests for this. So this is Paul Williams fucking Shirley Temple. And I went into it like, oh, Shirley.
I remember.
Shirley, take all of my cock. Oh, you have such a big dick, Mr. Williams.
And he was thrilled.
Yes, yes.
That's around the time he told Gino, Gilbert tries to get me to places that I don't want to go.
No, that was
Henry.
Henry Winkler.
That was Henry. Yeah.
Gilbert tries to get me to go down roads, and I just refuse to go down those roads.
Paul said Gilbert could be very inappropriate. Yeah.
Gilbert can be very inappropriate. Both
Poor
podcast
Paul.
guests.
What do you got, Raybone?
I hope you didn't already talk about this while I was buried in research.
I'm sure we did.
I'm sure you did. The Men.
Yeah, the Men. Yeah,
1950.
Stanley Kramer.
And it's weird, on the movie poster here it says a completely new experience between men and women.
Interesting.
Gilbert, what is that completely new experience between men and women?
Well, you'd have to ask Richard.
Anyway.
All right, we're going to put the call out again to Quincy Jones.
Yes.
Yeah. What if we got Pryor's widow in here and Brando's widow?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, and
Yes.
we had a debate. Like point counterpoint.
Quincy Jones produced all Michael Jackson's records, all the great stuff. He's got time on his hands. I mean, Michael Jackson hasn't been around for years. He's surely got time to do the podcast.
We asked Quincy to do the show, and his handlers have shut Quincy down from doing any press.
Really?
I know that's shocking.
You mean because
I can't
we asked
imagine
him,
why.
He can't do any press with anybody because we
No, he
asked
said Gilbert in particular.
Gilbert in particular.
So we're going to thank David Komorowski for his Producer of the Month idea. You can do the same. Go to Patreon.
Quincy Jones did the music for The Pawnbroker.
He did.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. A little Sidney Lumet reference. For his theme, Pryor and Brando movies, we will recommend.
What did they release?
Gilbert does not like The Freshman.
No.
He has not seen Don Juan DeMarco, but I'm going to recommend both. Paul brought up The Men, which I don't think he's even seen.
No.
But what the hell? Apocalypse Now. Obviously, I will recommend The Score and The Chase. And for Richard Pryor, definitely Blue Collar, Car Wash, and the Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars, and Motorcade.
Now, is it necessary for Producer of the Month to suggest a theme that raises some interesting sexual perversion that we haven't covered?
No, I think that's the first Producer of the Month episode that specifically covered sexual perversion. I was going through the list of Producer of the Month pitches on Patreon, and I said, what makes me think Gilbert will respond particularly well to this one? We like to keep him engaged in the show that bears his name. So there you go. That covered a lot of ground, and we never mentioned the cunnilingus chimps. So thank you, David Komorowski.
Yeah, and while
you,
they were
Raybone.
performing Cunnilingus, the music would play dun 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 dun.
There you go. There's a Nairobi Trio callback.
That's right.
From the last episode.
Hey, Verderosa, can we end it with the
Nairobi Trio?
Nairobi?
You see if you can find the music from the Nairobi Trio there, Frank. I'll be impressed.
And this has been Gilbert and Frank's Amazing Colossal Obsessions.
Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you, Raybone. I'm not thanking you.
And now, to play us out, the Cunnilingus Trio.